Hey everybody. So when we first set out on the road, there were obviously some things that we forgot or didn't think about. And so, it was a trial and error type thing, and we've built upon um our our build and what we bring with and what we don't bring with. So we share here lots of ideas on things that you definitely want and things that you could probably leave behind. And today I thought it would be really helpful if I put together a list of some of the things that you might not be thinking about if you are starting your whatever, your DIY build, and say your van or your SUV, and you're getting ready to make that like camper van setup. Maybe you're just going to be using it for a lot of trips, or maybe you're going to be full-time on the road. I'm sure you're getting super excited about it, but let me give you a quick list of things to just remember you might not be thinking about that are really easy to forget. Okay, so here's what I put down. A can opener. Again, one of those little things that doesn't seem like a big deal, but you don't want to hit the road and need a can opener, and you don't want to have to buy one. If you do forget one, you could get one at a thrift store, but don't forget things like can opener. A ladle, if you're going to be making soup or anything like that, that's convenient. Otherwise, you end up like me and using a spoon to get little bits of liquid out at a time with a tiny spoon that you have with. What a pain. As simple as a lighter if you want to be making campfires or cooking your food on the road like we do. Don't forget to have a lighter along. Don't want to get to camp and then not be able to do that unless you're really good at starting fires in the wild, which takes some talent. Food storage would be a huge one. You might not have been thinking much about food storage yet. You probably want to be thinking about this before you get on the road, because once you kind of have your build set up and you get, going, like when we were in the SUV, you're in limited space. And so it helps to think ahead of time about like what kind of containers you'll use. A great example is just certain areas of storage work better with squared containers. So if you already have that, it kind of already saves you on the build, and it saves you on money, so you don't feel like you have to go like buy the right container, because you can start working on that now and getting things whatever at thrift stores or for free from people, from recycling, stuff like that. We've changed our method along the way, but obviously we've been in different rigs now, but that's an important consideration. Also, maybe to have some dried or canned goods with you is a nice thing to have backup food. So you might want to just have some things as backup food, and obviously the dried stuff or packaged stuff would be better because that'll keep for longer. And then find a little spot to tuck that away. Yeah, food storage also would be pretty important to be thinking about in terms of if you want to be doing things on a budget like we do, then when things are on sale, sometimes you want to stock up, especially on like those dried goods. And so you want to have a place to put them. And again, we're talking about living in these small spaces, so you kind of have to plan ahead to have that space. And along with that, water storage is really important. Make sure you consider where you're going to keep water. That goes for the actual containers. So when we were in the SUV, we actually used platypus bottles, and the benefit there was just that these things could crunch down. So when they weren't full of water, they didn't take up excessive space. Certain jugs and water containers are going to hold their shape, and therefore, even if they're empty of water, they're still taking up all that space. So depending on how small your space is, foldable, collapsible things can be really beneficial. And like I said, those platypus bottles, honestly, a lot of our stuff was just because we already had it. And we were already big time backpackers, so we already had these platypus bottles. It was not necessarily convenient, but we're definitely more on the keep it on the budget side. And it fit that. So, I mean, at the beginning, it was us filling up at fountains and things like this, to get free water. And standing there with our little platypus 1 liter bottles and filling them up. We've we've advanced from there for sure, to where we now have a lot more storage and we stay on a lot longer. So the larger jugs work way better. If you will be having your water storage in some sort of container, also don't forget about being careful about it spilling. So making sure you build something or put it in something that it can sit upright and not be spilling on you. Some builds you will see, you might see pictures online of where the water is sitting there and there's maybe a tap. Cute idea, not always practical because lends itself to spilling. So be careful with that. Obviously, testing it out helps, and making sure you don't get on the road and then you go back and your water container is empty and you have to find out where all the water went. Okay, so that's kind of the food, water stuff. Another big one is think about a place to store wet and muddy stuff. You don't want to, again, you might start your road life out on a perfectly sunny day and then you find yourself in tons of rain or maybe snow. I don't know. We tend to stay out of the cold weather if we can. But rain, and if you're in an area, depending on the soil and the ground type, it can get muddy. So when we were in the SUV, muddy was really important because it was pretty much our bed. And we have dogs. So having all of us and all our stuff and our muddy shoes and dogs and all that jumping in on the bed was not a good idea. So what we did at the time was we actually had a kitty litter box that we basically repurposed. And we used that in the SUV and we put that also in a car topper. And that's where we put like wet, muddy gear for a while. And we also put our cast iron up there or out of the way too, because that got dirty. So that would go along these lines too. Anything that's going to be like dirty, whether it's black soot from a fire or muddy stuff, think about a spot to put it that won't be on your bed and in the way and really wrecking your little home on wheels. Okay, some other little things that you might forget. You might like a cheap hobby. We like hiking, but we also like reading. And so it's really nice to have books. I do like a hard book sometimes if I can, but we do live in a small space, so it's a give and take. But it might be beneficial to have something like an iPad or Kindle on hand so that you can load it up with books in a digital format. They've been around for a while now, so you can actually get a pretty cheap older version of one of these if you don't already have one. And honestly, even if you have a phone, there are options for ebooks as well. So you might think about this ahead of time, and it might be good before you hit the road also to load your device up with those books, because I don't know, once you get out there, who knows what your service will be like. We boondock a lot. Our service isn't always that great. So that would be a big one. And you can also load things up like PDFs and field guides and stuff that you just might want to read on those rainy days. Simple things like a pen and paper on hand is really helpful and easy to forget about. And you just don't want to be trying to do something and scrambling for things like a pen, paper, envelopes, and stamps if you have to send something out. That kind of goes well with thinking about easy access. So think about the things that you need to access easily and making sure that you designate a spot that's easy to get to. Again, when you live in a small space, stuff can get buried. You think you don't have that much stuff, but somehow it can disappear under everything else. So it makes it really hard to find it. So make sure that the things you really need are accessible, and the easiest way to do that is to think ahead about a place where all those things go. And it can be simple things like toilet paper. Where are you going to keep it? Do you really want the toilet paper buried when you need it? No. Also, girl-related stuff goes with that. A raincoat, again, you might hit the road on a beautiful sunny day, and then it pours, and you don't want your raincoat to be buried. It's good to have these things, again, in an easy-to-grab location. Dog leashes if you're traveling with a dog. Simple things like your underwear. You don't want to bury that and not be able to find a fresh pair of underwear. snacks, and maybe a cup that you drink out of. Having a spot for that stuff is just really convenient, makes things more comfortable. Your go-to stuff, like maybe your glasses or anything you don't want to get broken. And go by the rule, everything that can break or spill will do so. So just employ that rule in your build and your traveling build. So other things, like I said, with the paper stuff, also important documents. Have a spot for those. Sometimes, I mean, a glove box works in a vehicle, but you might also want those in another place. So thinking about where to store that. And don't forget your passport if you want to be traveling into, say, Canada or Mexico. What else? Oh, this is a simple one that you might not think of. Uh, Having some sort of like easy on-off shoe. So that could be flip-flops, sandals, slippers, something like that. When I was in the SUV, I just kept a really thin pair of flip-flops in the door. Again, might sound simple and not a big deal, but I didn't really want to put like hiking shoes on all the time. And sometimes I needed to just jump out of the vehicle. It was really convenient to have a pair of flip-flops just to throw on in that situation. Don't forget to consider lighting, especially at night. You can do really simple things. We've done all kinds of simple things. Solar lights are nice because they charge with the sun, and you can get cheap options for those. Flashlights and stuff like that too, but just make sure it's something that's actually going to work and not something where the batteries are going to be dead. You might need lighting at night for safety or just to be able to see or to read or whatever. So the best way to do that, again, is a test run and do it overnight, and you'll find those issues pretty quickly. Keep in mind, come up with a place of where you'll actually keep your toilet paper. I said, keeping it quick access, but make sure it's not somewhere where it can get wet. And also you need to think about things like where you'll keep used toilet paper and where you'll keep your trash. Again, in a tight space, this can be really inconvenient if you haven't thought it through. As simple as hand sanitizer might be something you want to have easy access. It usually works in the door of a vehicle if you're traveling in an SUV or wherever. And some sort of emergency kit. Have you thought about that? This could include things like Band-Aids and Benadryl, and if you need any other creams or whatever, just making it easily accessible, an emergency kit. In those situations, you don't want to be digging under piles of other stuff for it. You might not have thought of when stuff gets wet, how will you dry it? If you're on the road, do you really want to go to a laundromat and pay to dry it? And then if you're boondocking, you can hang it out somewhere. So, bringing some sort of line, and this can be all kinds of, you can repurpose stuff, but like we use an old dog run line, and we'll put it up, and we can hang sheets and clothes and stuff like that to dry it on. So, that's a cheap, good, small thing to have with that really comes in handy. If you're going to locations in bear country, you might want to get yourself some bear spray. If you're traveling with dogs along the lines, you might want to have them have some bear bells on. Any kind of bells. You can repurpose like a Christmas bell if you really want to put on their collar. Long line, again, might be handy if you need to clip them up. We like our dogs to be as wild and free as possible, but this is pretty useful. And a sheet that you can put down on top of your bed or somewhere. We'd use this. We put a sheet down in the SUV on our bed because they would just jump in. They have free reign, obviously, in that situation. We use it now in the truck camper, too, to put a sheet down. It's really easy to ball it up and then dump out all their hair and mud and everything else they track in. And then don't forget, again, this comes in really important, again, if you're crossing borders, make sure you have the paperwork handy that shows the dog's shots, especially rabies, because when you cross borders, sometimes they will ask you for that paperwork and they won't let you cross the border if you don't have it. Okay, so that's a good list of things that you might not be thinking about because you're thinking about all the other stuff that goes along with doing a build and hitting the road. So I hope that's super helpful for you guys and helps you not forget some of those important but sometimes seemingly small things. And I'll leave you with final advice that definitely do one initial test run if you're just going to be traveling in an SUV. Just, go for a long trip in it before you even do your build, and then you'll think of some ideas when you do that, and then come back and maybe do your build, and then after that go for a test run with your build. That way you can hopefully still be at a place where you have easier access to being able to, say, redo your build or change things around and make it perfect before you hit the road. But take it from me, you'll probably still change or want to change things along the way, and that's just the fun of the adventure. So I hope that helps. If it did, give the video a like. If you want to see more of our adventures here at Paradise on Pennies or get tips on how to do this the Nomad budget way, because we're definitely budget nomads here, then just subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.